Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aga Khan Foundation Clean Energy Session, bringing equity to vulnerable communities. My name is Aliya Jasmine. I'm an environmental journalist and television host living in Los Angeles. You may have seen me on NBC News or the Discovery Channel or MTV, where I've done many documentaries around environmental issues. Very excited to be here tonight and welcome all of you, everyone who is here, including our professional network, young professionals, and of course, a lot of the AKF ambassadors. So among the many things that we're going to talk about today, we will be discussing is the opportunities for inclusion of women and marginalized groups in the clean energy sector. I'm particularly excited to talk and examine about how women can enter the value chains of a range of clean energy technologies and how access to clean energy and inclusion in the sector can create a continuum of opportunities and of empowerment. And on that note, I am going to introduce our panelists today, who we are very lucky to have with us. First, I will introduce Revealed, the country director for Aga Khan Foundation Tanzania. She has a broad contextual knowledge of East Africa and great perspective on women's economic inclusion in East Africa. Revealed Kataru is the country director for Aga Khan Foundation in Tanzania, providing strategic leadership to achieve the foundation's aim of improved quality of life and human dignity. She has 2 decades of experience in development and private sector work across East Africa, with a special focus on women, girls, and youth. Welcome, Revealed.
Thank you very much.
And next, it's also my honor to introduce His Excellency Minister Aliya Juma, who was recently appointed the Minister of Energy and Water Resources for Tajikistan, an accomplishment resulting from the tireless dedication and outstanding accomplishments as a CEO of IPS Asia's energy portfolio and as the General Director of Premier Energy for the last 13 years, where notably, through its numerous cross-border energy products, the company is providing light and warmth to over 50,000 people living in rural and remote areas of northern Afghanistan, some of which are accessing electricity for the first time in history. Incredible knowledge, and thank you so much for being here, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Likewise, true pleasure being with you today.
And I do have to note one very funny story for everybody who's entering today. As we were doing our technical rehearsals with Revealed and His Excellency, we were talking about the lighting, and some of the the young guys who are on our tech team were saying to Dallaire, you need to make sure you have the right lighting. Will the lighting be okay? And I am paraphrasing, but Dallaire's response was, I run the energy and lighting for this whole country. I think I can figure out the lighting for this. So we're very happy to have you and your sense of humor here with us today. So we are proud to have these cutting edge experts, obviously, as we listen to them, as we get a great insight from their personalities. Remember that the life-changing projects that they're part of is possible thanks to the fundraising efforts here in the United States and also in Canada. So as you hear about Revealed and Damar's projects and the progress that they've achieved, I hope you also feel very proud at home as you're watching this to be part of this movement. I also really hope that you will be inspired to continue to fundraise and donate to be part of these solutions and future solutions to the obstacles that still remain out there. So with that being said, Revealed, can you introduce yourself and how you kind of came to be in this position? I know you love your work. I'd love to hear more about that work and how you got here.
Thank you very much, Aliya. After my first degree, I volunteered in our community school for 2.5 years. And this was a school that was taking orphan children, and particularly girls. And I found it motivating to just give them the opportunity to make choices and change their career. After doing that, then I found myself in development, and I started at the field level, actually, and I worked for a couple of years. And I was interfacing with people in marginalized geographies, people who couldn't be looked at or considered by the banks or formal financial institutions because they were unbankable. And we tried to help them to find financial services by establishing their own savings and credit facilities, and also starting income-generating activities in agriculture. I did that for some time, and then I moved to middle level and then senior management. I think I found it quite motivating to see people moving from one level to the other and being able to make changes in their lives and invest the benefits to their family. What motivates me on the kind of work that I do is to be able to change the future of women, girls, boys, and men so that they and their children have a chance to make choices in the future in terms of what health facilities to go to, what schools to go to, what food to eat, and whether to socialize and where to socialize. So I find that quite motivating. I would like to talk a bit about the context in East Africa and where we do our work. In Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, the natural resources are quite abundant and not tapped to the full potential. And so when we're talking about clean energy, thinking of opportunities in hydro, solar, wind, and biomass energy, I think is an untapped opportunity. And the East Africa community is exposed to clean energy, and their products and services within the communities up to the rural levels. Again, the East African countries are signed up to global strategies and national frameworks on renewable energy and climate smart agriculture. So I see that this topic and the discussion we're having today is very relevant for this region and also related to the kind of work that Aga Khan Foundation does in East Africa.
So I'd love to follow up on that. And for all of you who are watching, what we're going to do and logistically how we're going to do this interview is we're going to talk to Revealed about the work that she's doing, and then we'll move on and talk to His Excellency about the work happening in Tajikistan and Afghanistan and East Asia. And then we're actually going to do a rapid fire test question. It's not a test, don't worry. It's questions with both of you. But I would like to say, Your Excellency, I know a lot of what we're talking about with Revealed applies to you and your work, and I'm sure a lot of it is intriguing and piquing your curiosity. So if you do want to jump in and ask a question, by all means do. But on that note, Revealed, you mentioned climate change and the use of resources, and I actually have a specific question for you about environmental degradation, and that is how does environmental degradation and climate change impact the communities that you work with in southern Tanzania? Like, can you kind of give us a view and a feeling on those tangible impacts?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a beautiful question. Environmental degradation and climate change does impact the communities that we're working with. Over the years, we've seen a decline in soil fertility. We've seen a decline and reliability of rains. And we're talking about a country where 80% of the population depends on rain-fed agriculture. 70% of the population of now in 2020, 59 million people, 70% of that population lives in rural area. And there is soil degradation, water degradation, rainfall patterns are so unreliable, there are floods and there's drought. And so this impacts hugely on people's livelihoods. The daily food and the daily income is impacted hugely by this. And there are times when, because of floods or drought, a farmer invests all the money they have and it's swept away, and they're very frustrated on where to start next. So, I mean, in a marginalized community, more than ever, this becomes very critical, paying attention to environmental degradation and climate change, because it impacts on the livelihoods of the people that we're talking about.
It's so interesting hearing you say that, because, you know, as an environmental journalist working here in Southern California, we cover so much about, you know, the lack of rain, the droughts, the floods, even here, and how it impacts agriculture here. But I'd love to hear more about, you know, in terms of how it's perceived. How do the locals in East Africa and in Tanzania, how do they perceive these issues? As I'm trying to understand how it might be different than how North Americans perceive these issues.
Yes, no, relevant question again. Yeah, so, you know, AKF works in very marginalized and remote places. So in the first place, the community is disadvantaged. The resilience is quite low. But look, you're talking about environmental degradation and climate change to a person whose immediate challenge is survival, is about putting food on the table for their families. It's about meeting the medical needs of their family. What are they going to do? I think, of course, they will look for solutions that will help to solve this immediate problem. And therefore, they resort to things like cutting timber, burning charcoal, expanding the farm to solve these short-term issues. They do appreciate, they notice the changes, but they need to provide for themselves and their family. So it's quite challenging. And I think the second issue is also, even if they were to think about alternatives, how costly are these alternatives? And some of these alternatives are not available in some of these communities. So that brings about the challenges. And to compare to this community in the discussion, I think that the difference between the communities we work with and this audience we're talking to is that, first of all, this audience has a global perspective and a global connection, and they have access to alternative solutions, so they can make some choices. Secondly, the level of education and exposure varies. And thirdly, I think access to information, access to resources, and access to platforms for engaging and for dialogue are very limited for some of these communities.
Wow. That's unbelievable insight. So talk to me about the efforts with the clean energy sector. Why, knowing what you just told us, knowing what we now know, why focus that energy? Why focus your efforts on the clean energy sector?
Thank you. I think it's very critical and important to focus on clean energy. One, because the population, if you look at the population, particularly of Tanzania, by 2020 at 59 million, with an annual growth rate of 2.9%. Just imagine in the next 5 years what the population will be like, and it's hugely dependent on natural resources. Secondly, this population is very young. The age between 0 to 14 form about 42% of the total population, and the age between 15 to 24 forms 20% of the total population. So just between 0 to 24 is about roughly 62% of the total population. Very young, energetic, unemployed, particularly youth. Access to capital and resources, ownership of property is very limited. What are they going to do? Resort to natural resources. So if we do not talk about it, if we do not focus on clean energy, if we do not deliberately tackle it, then maybe there may be no resources, natural resources in the future. That's one. I think that clean energy brings huge opportunities for small and medium enterprise growth and employment opportunity, particularly for women and for youth. So I think it is critical. Again, I look at clean energy from the point of health benefits, particularly for the women who are engaged in household activities, preparing food every day, facing the smoke and the heat, using charcoal and fuel. And I think we know that sometimes they have adverse effects over time. So being able to discuss and work on this, I think, will also help to protect their life. And finally, I think that there are some cost efficiencies. Definitely, upfront and the beginning, not, but over time, I think you'll be able to see the cost efficiencies. And again, especially when there's a saturation of products in the market.
It's so interesting as you're talking about how how clean energy will impact individual women in their households, in their communities. I can see His Excellency Minister Dallaire also nodding his head. I feel like this is it's a really interesting topic to talk about how women as stakeholders really deserves an entire part of this conversation. And I'm curious, revealed in your work, what are some of the notable changes that you've noticed when it comes to how this has transformed the lives of women in Tanzania?
Right. I'll just touch on one or two. One, particularly women who are engaged in micro and small and medium enterprises, where they are able to resort to clean energy, that has enabled to save time for them, time that they would have used going to look for some of those natural fuel sources in the forest or charcoal. That saves them a lot of time. And I believe if you save or recover a woman some of her time, that time will be put into more useful, constructive work, taking care of the children, helping improve children's learning, engagement, development, health, and stuff like that. Again, I also have seen that engagement of women in clean energy has given them the opportunity to learn and increase their income. You see some of them and see how they feel very empowered, first of all, by getting the knowledge, being able to apply the knowledge, and knowing that they can do something, and they're just like anybody else, or just like the men, and the girls are just like the boys, that they can do. And this gives them opportunity to rise up to more challenges. And so it touches on the aspects of empowerment for women and girls as well.
So on that note, revealed, I think that's a great transition over to the work happening right now in East Asia and in Tajikistan. So Your Excellency Minister Dallaire Juma, I'd love to hear a little bit about your work, but let me first start a little lighter. And I know you're passionate about what you do. Tell me what you love about your work.
I think it is very much what Reveal's saying is really through the clean and renewable energy make the life of the people transformative, and I have been very fortunate and blessed to have opportunities to serve in three countries of Central Asia: Tajikistan and Afghanistan and Pakistan, and especially in the most remote areas where sometimes access to the energy as such is not only a matter of necessities, but when it comes to winter, it's really a matter of surviving. So we have been operating in areas where the temperature goes as low as minus 40 degrees of Celsius. I'm not sure what is in Fahrenheit, but it's extremely cold. So in winter, it's really something that you need to to make sure that you do provide reliable electricity. So it's suddenly clean, and I think in the areas where we're walking in the mountain areas, we are gifted with the hydro, where we do provide most of our electricity through the hydro, but it has to be also reliable, especially in winter. And then also it has to be affordable, because you are working with the most marginal communities, the most remote areas. And I think what really drives me always is anytime we electrify a community, and by definition, because we are doing the rural electrification in these three countries as a industrial promotion service of the Aga Khan Fund for Economic Development, it's actually it's really become transformative. and I can't think of any aspects of the life that it can make them different. For example, I recently was in Afghanistan and I visited a village which we electrified a couple years ago, and for me it was literally transformative. You see more. There's more activities. You could see economic activities. You could see there's more infrastructure. You could see schools. You see kids actually going to the computer classes, and all these things have not been there. So it's really transformative, so that's what makes me passionate. Is really in a quite a short period of time, you see how the life of a particular community can be transformative. But there are, of course, many other drivers that make me up in the morning.
That's incredible. That transformative experience sounds, I just got goosebumps hearing you talk about that. And you touched on a few of the different needs, the challenges, the winter you talked about, the affordability of the clean energy, these mountainous and remote communities needing these clean energy. So I guess based on that, I'll ask you a similar question to what I posed to Revealed, which is how is environmental degradation and how is climate change impacting these communities that you work in Central Asia, in Tajikistan, in northern Pakistan, and in north central Afghanistan?
Absolutely. I think I guess we could start with as a AKD and our activities in Tajikistan in 90s. The areas that we have been working, it's called Vilayat Mukhtar Kistan, it's eastern part of Tajikistan, very remote areas, and it's got into the energy crisis. It's only 13% of the population had 12 hours electricity, and the remaining populations of almost 90% didn't have that electricity. And in 90s until early 2000, we lost 70% of our trees.
Wow.
It's a mountain area. 70, yeah. It's a mountain areas. Being in the United States and Canada, I'm not sure that I should use the word forest, but those are the trees that we do have. And we lost 70% of them because there was no coal, there was no gas, there was no electricity. So the only way to survive, it was for the people and go and to use the trees. And unfortunately, to the extent we started cutting our fruit trees. So it's there where Aga Khan Fund for Economic Development, the partnership with the government of Tajikistan, entered into the public-private partnership to address that energy crisis. And since then, if you travel to the eastern part of Tajikistan, you could see this part of the country more greenery. There are many reasons, but I'm convinced and humbly believe that it's also because today people have uninterrupted, affordable, reliable, renewable, clean, green electricity throughout the year. So what we do, it's exactly is actually addressing the environmental one. And in the mountain areas, and Reveal was reflecting on this one. It's the same situation, but I think what I would also add is that it's actually also dangerous for kids and women, mainly because men had to travel to other parts of the country or out of the country to make money. Work outside because we had a limited works at that time. So it's only kids and women spend 4 to 5 hours going into the mountains, putting their lives in risk and collecting these woods and coming back and making sure they're using it for the cooking and heating. So it is also, really to ensure that we reduce the risk of the people while they're trying to find alternative to the electricity. What we also see, and especially we could see it for the last 5 years plus, where the climate change does affect us. As I normally say, it's not anymore on the TV, it's now happening to us. So if it's summer, we could see more flooding, we could see more landslides, and which actually put in high risk all our assets that happened to us back in 2015. And what we see in winter, it's more colder winter, it can be longer winter, and unfortunately the hydrology factor, we see less water in the winter time. So all of our rivers are coming from the glacier, and the regions that we have been working, those regions is known to be one of the top 10, I believe, most vulnerable areas globally. So in this context, we need to adjust. So talking to today, almost 100% of the electricity that we do provide to the people in these three countries is coming out of the electricity, hydropower. And it is therefore now we are diversifying. Actually, 3 days ago, we did commission the first solar power plant as a utility in Tajikistan. So we are now putting more and more solars. It is on the household levels, but for the countries like Tajikistan and what we have, as we started our operations in Afghanistan and Pakistan, we're going to put solar then. And now we also working with the government and with the development partners and bringing the wind. So we need to diversify because the climate change does affect our sources of generations, but we are committed to stay with the clean energy, having that renewable.
It's so interesting too, because of all the different seasons that you experience, the hot summers and then the cold winters as well. I'm curious if, while listening to the minister revealed, if there were any, commonalities that you heard with what's happening, in Central Asia. And I'll actually, ask you the same question, Your Excellency, when you talk about, AKDN's IPS priorities for the clean energy sector in Central Asia. Did you find any similarities or differences with what Revealed spoke of? I'd love to hear you both comment on each other's work.
Thank you, Aliya. Yes, I do. I mean, when the minister is talking about deforestation to that large extent, I mean, it resonates with what's happening now in East Africa and in Tanzania particularly. You'd think because there are not so many factories and stuff like that, the contribution to the green energy, green gas emissions is quite low. But the change of land use and deforestation, the extent at which it's happening, I think is worrying. And for me, if that is not strategically looked at and deliberately controlled and alternative sources given to people, then we'll have a bigger problem, and a global problem. It contributes to the global problem. Again, he does mention that clean energy is a benefit and a solution to women. And I completely agree. I mean, if you and we are thinking about women empowerment, if we are thinking about enabling women who are really responsible a lot for household resources, they may not have the decision-making and control power. But through clean energy, I think we can begin to devolve and support them and give them some of that power. And again, this is something that contributes to the country's GDP. And in most of the countries, the women population outstrips that of men. So you're talking about a labor force that is not being given the skills and the resources to improve the economy, and yet they are at the back end doing a lot of the work, having to make the decisions and choices, not having the information. I think it's critical. If they are provided the information, they're empowered, they're given awareness, I think their choices and decisions and their negotiation power will be able to turn around other people, onboard other people, and change some of the norms as well.
Yeah, that's an amazing point revealed. I think that's a really important point to hit. And so, Your Excellency, I mean, I'll turn it over to you. But like, what role do women play in your plans for clean energy sectors in the countries that you work in? And based on your experience in Central Asia, are there unique perspectives and attributes that women bring to the clean energy sector in that part of the world?
Absolutely. Let me talk about the from the utility point of view, because I have been still running three companies in Asia. Even though my appointment as a Minister of Energy and Water Resources for Tajikistan took place last year. Therefore, most of my feedbacks will come from my experience with the utilities. The short answer: women are our champions. It's because when we are providing the electricity to the rural areas, the first and the immediate beneficiaries are women. Why? There's several examples. One is, I mentioned earlier that it takes them 4-5 hours to go and to collect the wood. Now they do have those 4-5 hours saving, and they're going actually normally in the afternoon for the tea parties with their friends. Number one. Number two, it keeps their housekeeping for them very, very simple. Number three, actually they could see that in this part of the world, kids are still very great supporters to parents when it comes to the livestock. So that all the day they're helping the parents, and it's only in the evening that they could do their homeworks. And there's no any more excuses. There's no candles, there's no kerosene, and you name it. And then the fourth one is because women are, just imagining that the main source of the energy is the wood. So the women do, use normally, whether it's bakery or cooking, lots of smoke. So it also helps their health. So because of this one, they do become our champions in terms of the willingness to pay. So we are working in the areas where, in our business, there's two things when it comes to the, let's say, to the tariffs for electricity. It's affordability to pay and willingness to pay. So it's the willingness of women has been increased, that the areas that we have been working, we have normally issue with the collection because people do see the benefits of that one. What we also see is that, I mentioned to you the 4-5 hours savings. Other than to go for the tea party, they're starting going to the computer classes. Actually, there's cases when they established an enterprise, and that enterprise was also have been help with the Renewable colleagues from AKF in Tajikistan and in Afghanistan. They're actually starting to doing the enterprises. Girls become more competitive in the studies, and we as we have as a IPS, we do have some of our subsidiaries this Pamir energy in Tajikistan, production energy in Afghanistan. And I mentioned to you about the villages that we electrified a couple of years ago. Actually, as I'm talking to you, we have provided 12 full scholarships for the higher education for the girls and boys in Afghanistan who are gonna go to the finest university in Tajikistan to study undergraduate degree at the electric engineering. They're going to the same universities that I did. You know, when we started, it was 100% boys. This time, 6 out of 12 are girls. You know, you could also see that, at least, I mean, it's my interpretation of the situations that, you know, those things, especially in the rural electrification, and I do repeat myself, there's many other reasons why we see the women empowerment, why we see our daughters and sisters are more competitive. But I do believe in this particular case is because that we are bringing the clean and affordable and reliable electricity to this part of the world. And it would take the partnership. It needs to bring major stakeholders together to make it happen.
That's really incredible to hear the direct effect that clean energy has on girls and on women and on their school, on their work, on their ability to socialize. And as we all know, even during this pandemic, the mental health toll that it takes to not be able to see your friends or not be able to go to tea parties. I mean, it is incredible that there is a direct correlation and a direct cause and effect there. You mentioned, Your Excellency, you know, in passing the solar plant and the solar panels, and I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that, and also revealed. I'll open the question to you because of the abundance of sunshine, obviously, in your part of the world as well. But is this common? Are there many of these solar plants in the world? Is, you know, Your Excellency, is this the first one in your area? Can you tell me a little bit more about the solar plant?
Absolutely. I mean, the technology of the solars is quite well spread worldwide for the last several decades. However, I think it depends on the context. Revealed from Tanzania, where they're fortunate to have more flatlands. There's more lands, there's more rains. We have been working as an Aga Khan Development Network in the countries, eastern part of Tajikistan, northern part of Afghanistan, and northern part of Pakistan, where then, for example, 97% of the areas that we are working in Tajikistan are mountains. So it's mountains, and it has lots of hydro, so the glaciers, the rivers. So it's really a matter that for that particular areas, the development of the hydropower seems to be the most competitive, the most, I would say, affordable and sustainable one. And until recently, 100% of our capacity have been hydro. But it's the last years of the climate change where we see the hydrology factor is actually getting, let's say, less favorable. Those kind of things are making us to move to solar. Why today? Because one thing is the climate change, but it's also the solar and the wind, and we also, there's a kind of technologies called the battering energy storage systems. It's something that, you know, you could generate electricity, you keep it in there, store in that kind of battery, and you release it when you need it. And this we are doing today because what's happened for the last several years, the cost for those technologies significantly reduced. So it's coming very close to the cost that you develop the hydro. But then the efficiencies of the technologies have been also reduced. So it's a combination of different, I would say, external factors, and things happen on the market. And I think it's also, it's a learning curve for us to As I said, the 4 or 5 years made us more proactive, made us to think more critically how we can adapt to the climate change.
And Revealed, I'd love to hear from you on this as well. Can you tell me a little bit about the, what's happening, in the field of solar, if there's any projects happening around that within Tanzania and East Africa?
Yes, and as the minister has mentioned, hydro energy has been the highest and most tapped in East Africa and in Tanzania particularly. But there is now the move to tap into solar. And as the minister rightly mentioned, the land surface that is flat and the direct heat and sunshine here is immense. I mean, a huge opportunity to tap. But I was reading a report yesterday which said that clean energy or renewable energy only forms about 2% of the mix of energy sources in East Africa and in Tanzania, which is very, very, very small, but the potential is huge. And a few projects have been done, but they are really small scale and mini grid level. And when you look at the market, the kind of products that are there are mainly for household lighting and a little for smaller industries and businesses. But there is opportunity for that to really be expanded. I guess for me, the challenge is really how can the market needs be identified and private sector provide to the market. That's one. And then secondly, the biggest acquisition challenge is usually the upfront capital. How can we find solutions in the market to enable people to acquire these resources and pay over time? A lot of credit facilities that we see in the West are rarely here, and partly because people do not have also the required evidence to provide to financial institutions, land titles and major investments. So access to capital to be able to move large scale into this kind of things is quite a bit a holder for most of the people here.
Yeah, Aliya, if you can allow me to reflect on what Revealed said. Yeah.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah. Number one, Revealed was so kind saying that Minister, as rightly said, I'm sure she's aware that there's a true rules. Minister is never wrong, and if the minister is wrong, see the rule one. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but I'm happy that it makes what I'm saying here makes sense in Africa. Just because we as Aga Khan Development Network also operating several energy projects, including the rural electrifications in Eastern Africa, in particular in Uganda. Revealed said something that very close to us. Normally the rural we as Aga Khan Fund for Economic Development, when it comes to rural electrification and in Asia, we did challenge, and I think we managed several stereotypes. Normally, when you talk about the rural electrification, you really talk about the light. As long as you have a light in the evening, as long as you can see your TV set, and if possible, to have a refrigerator just to keep some dairy there. We did challenge it, and it's not because we just wanted to be cool, but we thought that it's by challenging it. This is the way how we can make it sustainable. So what we are saying to us here in Asia as an AKDN, we say that irrelevant whether that electricity in a let's say in a big city, what we call the in grid area, or whether it's in the most remote areas in the middle of nowhere, when we call it a off-grid area, the quality, the reliability of the provided electricity should be the same. Moreover, when we go to the rural electrifications, we have to make sure that it's not only for the household, but and it's not only, let's say, for the public utilities such as schools or health centers, but it's also for the small and medium enterprises. So we do go there and we put bigger capacity. Yeah, it's more expensive for us, but what it does over the time, this is what we call the cross-subsidizing. So what you do, you bring the electricity there, but to make it sustainable, you also promote the small, medium enterprises. You charge them higher price so that it can cross-subsidizing, but you also, by this, creating the jobs, so you increase the affordability for the people to pay. And, I mentioned earlier that when we took over, it's only 13% of the population had 12 hours electricity in winter. Today, it's 96%. Next year, inshallah, when we talk to each other, it will be 100%. And it's the same. It's in Tajikistan, and it's going to be the same true in Afghanistan. But what I am saying is that and by the way, it's a partnership. You as a private sector cannot go there only and do this one. You as a private sector goes, you as a normally the private sector is an effective, efficient implementing partner. So we look at the government, and actually I am the government today. So let's say saying that, look, those are the areas. Let's share the cost. Let's take the pain at the beginning. However, over the time, we will make it sustainable. So it's really, when it's come to the rural electrifications, we do believe in the public-private partnership, and in a partnership between government of Tajikistan and the Aga Khan Development Network. The experience that we had here in Tajikistan, now we have been replicating in other countries. So you can't go there on your own. You have to make sure that you bring many stakeholders together to align it, and actually to kind of have a clear understanding, vision, and strategy to achieve why you brought those stakeholders together.
And I think, I have one last, I want to get into the rapid fire section of this. I'm excited to hear you both answer in the rapid fire questions. But before we do, my last question really is about new technology. And I guess, coming from North America, my question to both of you in two, different parts of the world would be, as you are approaching clean energy and as you're working on these clean energy projects, are you at this point really just, trying to stay afloat, or maybe a better metaphor is just trying to keep the lights on, or are you really able to use new technologies and innovation to play a part of the clean energy work being done right now in East Africa and in Central Asia? I asked that question to both of you, so whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
Aliya, would you like to start?
Up to you.
All right. Thank you very much. For Aga Khan Foundation, the way we do our work is we try and catalyze the systems, whether it's the education system, it's the market systems. And so ours is to look at what is in the market, what does the market want, and who are the actors and players in the market. Is it functioning very well? And where it is not functioning, what can we do as a foundation to make it function. So as we speak now, we notice that the challenges are really in access to finance and capital, and identifying institutions that are able to provide that to business people to be able to reach out to these markets, both urban and rural, and service those markets with renewable energy products is one of the things we look at. The other issues are environmental, business environment and policies, and we look at those. Are there policies and is the business environment inhibiting for private sector engagement, and how can we dialogue and engage with the relevant stakeholders and with the government to make an enabling environment for this to happen. And one of the other things we've noticed is that the clients or the smallholder farmers, the people who live in the rural communities and the big businesses do not understand each other. And so many times you find products in the market that are really not meeting the demands or the needs of these people. So being able to identify that and brokering that relationship to ensure that the suppliers understand what the market is looking for and are able to deliver that to the market. And if there are any hiccups and challenges for them to be able to deliver that those issues are addressed. Sometimes by us, most times not by us, but we find the actors and players because we want to see the market systems working. The AKF can step away and the systems will continue to work. And it makes business sense for the private sector because it's about making profits. If they don't, then they'll go bust. And that's not what we want. So that's kind of the role that Aga Khan Foundation plays. And we are really engaging with the service providers, and we see that there are interesting products. All we need to do, I guess, is to engage and find the right players who can collaborate with them and be able to get this started, rolling, piloted, and then expanding.
So you would say yes to new technologies and innovation within the clean energy world, but they need to be solutions based.
Definitely, and particularly that we have a big youth population who are very eager and interested to try new things, definitely.
Your Excellency, what about in Central Asia?
Yeah, no, thank you. By the end of the day, yes, we still and we will provide the light and warmth, and that's our mission and visions, to bring light and warmth to each household in Asia, in the areas that we have been working. So I guess that stays. We need the light, the electricity for appliances, and you name it. However, when it comes to a question in terms of applying the technologies, we are bringing those technologies into the I guess into the production process, into the business process, to make it effective. And for example, I would like to give you some examples. Now, as we are talking to you, we are developing 26 hydro, solar, wind, and storage systems capacities. And if you go and do it the classical way, you have it. It's big. It's there. You bring your staff there. They of course run it, and you kind of develop your cost, and then you charge your people, and then you're ending up to making losses because the technologies that you traditionally use won't work. So what we do today, we bring more efficient, smaller, and most importantly, remotely. So the technologies that we have been doing, we are doing it remotely, because it is effective, it's a cost effective, and it is more efficient. B, in the climate change, the adaptation, it means that you do adapt your technologies, you do adapt your structure when it comes to the hydro development. We have been working in Afghanistan, and therefore the security, you always be mindful and use the technologies that that whenever, and unfortunately often, the security issues, you still can remotely provide those services. This is one part of it, and this is what we are doing. But I think what is more important, we in AKDN, we call it the AKDN Financing Digital Ecosystems. It's interesting, we are utility, but because we are knocking on the door of each household in the areas that we have been working, and by the way, several times in a month, in the past, we look at this as when normally, unfortunately, that's the financing. This is where I hate when we talk about the profit and loss, where the staff seems to be as a cost. For me, staff, it should be on the balance sheet. It is our main asset. So we change our approach, and actually we realize that the greatest things that we have in any part of the areas that we're working, our staff and go to talk each household several times a month. Now, within the AKDN, we have been created a platform, and we call it a Total Access, where through that platform, my colleagues now happen to be providing banking services, different kind of payments, micro insurance, micro loan, any kind of the things, as long as your services that you do, you just need to digitalize your services in terms of the billings and the payments, and suddenly we can become. So we are using the technologies, and I think what also help us, the electricity, it's about poles. So in those poles, you can also put a very small, tiny things which call the fiber optic cables. And if you put that very fiber optic cables, you are connected to the world and the high speed. So, what I think we're also doing, the technologies, we are kind of diversifying what we do, but it's again because we do have that, there's two things, there's lots of things happening on the market in terms of the technologies, but also the fact that those technologies now can be combined, where we ultimately, not only as a utility company, but we can become a provider services for many, many other companies and service providers.
Well, thank you so much for those answers. For our discussion so far has been so informative and really, really, I mean, honestly, very interesting. It's great to talk to two experts in different parts of the world about the same topic and hear the differences, but also so many similarities in how we're approaching clean energy around the world. So let's move on to our rapid fire questions. These questions have been formulated to get yes or no answers out of you. But if you do feel like you need to expand a little bit, feel free. So
Is that third options maybe?
They're not meant to be a maybe option, but I have a feeling you might give us a few maybe options.
Sure, I can say it depends.
It would be quite political of you to do so. So here's here's the first one. So both of these questions are for both of you. So we'll go revealed, you can answer first, and then Minister, you can answer second. If you had to choose, would you use incandescent, LED, or compact fluorescent bulbs?
LED.
LED.
Okay. Does sustainable energy save money?
It does.
It absolutely does. The village that we electrify, the cost goes 6 times less. This is from our experience.
Okay. What are you currently reading, or what's the last book that you read?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Classic.
Typical.
The world is flat.
Interesting.
but it was, oh, I guess I haven't read for a while.
So you're not recommending the book, is what you're saying?
No, I do recommend books, but I'm saying that I'm not a great reader. So,
Okay, our next rapid fire question is, does electricity increase GDP?
Definitely.
yes, it does. The areas that we have been working, local GDP, from our experience, was increasing in 2 digits the first 10 years that we electrified the area.
In your experience, this is an interesting rapid fire question. So, in your experience, should people say yes more or no more?
Are you going to judge me?
No judgment. This is a judgment-free zone.
No more.
I'm with you. What do you think, Minister?
Thank you.
No, it depends, but I would say that people should stay more positive.
So you think yes more?
Stay more positive.
Okay, I'll take it. I like your very diplomatic answer. Okay. We talked about this a little bit, but just to stay with the rapid fire question, does electricity improve gender equality? Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
What is your earliest memory? Random question. What's your earliest memory? Revealed, I'll go with you first. What's your earliest memory?
I think 5 years for me.
Are you going to tell us what it was? What was the memory?
Oh, no, you don't want to know. No, it's about a beautiful red striped dress that I had.
It's funny the things we first remember, right?
Exactly.
What about you, Minister? What's your earliest memory?
I think it was 5 years when I was giving hard time to my mom not to go. I was not happy to go to the kindergarten that particular day. The trade-off was that she promised me to buy for me ice cream.
See, I'm a diplomat since day one. All right. How much is an average electricity bill in Tanzania or Tajikistan?
In Tanzania, I think it's 283 roughly kilowatts per year on average.
The lifeline consumption is at 360 kilowatt hours a month, so it's in the range of 4,000 kilowatt hours a year.
Who is your hero right now?
Wow, nice question. And none of you know who she is. It's my mother.
Oh, it's a great answer.
Yeah.
Why is she your hero right now?
When I look back several things in my life, my mother didn't have a high level of education, but now I noticed in the community and in the villages, people came for advice and counseling to her. She stopped in primary, but people of all walks of life would come to her. If they had problems, they would come to her for counsel. And I just thought that was amazing. Without education still, if she was able to do that, I think life skills, I think that is something that helps people move a long way. And probably it's also about development from childhood moving on. That can help people with coping and life skills and being able to make decisions. It's something that I think helped her and helped people around, and it helps people to cope through life.
I love that answer. I think, did we lose the minister?
Maybe.
Yes, we have lost the minister. Should we wait to get reconnected or? Okay, so small hiccup because our energy minister forgot to plug in his laptop, but he is back with us now. Your Excellency, rapid fire question.
There's a definition: minister without portfolio. I'm a minister of energy without energy.
I love it. Well, I'm glad you got it plugged in and you are back so quickly. So I'll put the rapid fire question over to you. Again, reminder, rapid fire, quick answers. But who is your hero right now?
It's similar to what Renewable said. It's my dad. He was and he is. He left us. He left this world many years ago. But he's the one who's shaped me. He's the one who put the principles in me, and his names also have opened for me so many doors. Even today, I am quite happy to, still today, like people come and see me not as a minister, but as a son of my dad. So this for me means a lot.
Oh, I love that. Okay, last rapid fire question for both of you. What's next for renewable energy in East Africa and in Central Asia?
Yeah, I think really in East Africa, I think it's really being able to move and expand or scale up renewable energies. As I touched on before, I think if you look at the energy consumption in East Africa, only about 2% is modern renewable or clean energy, contributes to the mix of the rest. So I think there is really space to expand this.
What about you, Your Excellency?
I think, as I said, it's now also upscaling the solar and wind electric powers in the region. That's number one. However, what suddenly we are in the areas where there are lots of seismic. It's a seismic zone, and there are lots of things happening under the ground. So the geothermal would be also a potential, and I guess it will take time to make the technologies more affordable to increase the efficiency. But I think over the time it should be the thermal energy too.
It's interesting for both of you, expanding and diversifying the different methods of clean energy. So thank you both. Revealed and
thermal, I meant the geothermal. So it's a geothermal.
Oh, yes, thank you for that clarification. And thank you both for being here, both Revealed and Minister Dallaire. It was so great to talk to both of you. Really was a highlight for me to hear about what's happening in both of your parts of the world and with clean energy. So I thank you for sharing your stories with us and helping us understand that there is great hope for the future and for different places around the world. I think sometimes, especially lately, we've been looking for that hope, and it's nice to hear that it exists and that you're both working to make sure that happens, and that there is also still a need to continue this work, to expand it, to grow it, to push forward. And so I'm sure that we have left all of you, the group out there who is watching this, with a lot to talk about, and it is time for our breakout session. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Khalil.